Radio at freedomslips.com. It's 2 in the morning on the East Coast of the United States. I have no idea what time it is down and under, but it is time for Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Hello and welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave
and Becky.
And see what I did there? On WZZR. It's always keeping someone on their toes, right? Broadcasting from Australia, the imaginary continent, for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio. Where it's more than just radio. So jump in the chat room if you can. I'm trying to get in there right now. I'm just loading this page very slowly. It's my bad. This is show number, Dave?
365.
365? 560 and 300? 360. In a year. So we have actually filled a year.
Oh my god, that is so delayed. I think it's the interwebs. That's what I think. Poor Mackie and his connection. Goodness me. Still haven't heard from him yet. Oh, it's just crazy. Did you know, in Meckie's absence with his terrible internet, it is online, on air and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen from anywhere. Listen at home on a Gracetable.digital radio. If you missed Solaris' show, she had Bill Brown on, and they were talking about the pyramids of Egypt. I caught almost all of it. Almost. Can't confess to have heard all of it, but wow, extraordinary thing. I was actually looking through my own slide decks of the stone masonry from around and all around the world while he's talking. It was just truly amazing. Look, to catch Solaris' show, if you missed it or you missed other hosts, if only first heard about Revolution Radio, there's a way to be able to hear all of the host shows, and that is subscribe to the archives for $5.95 a month. Pardon me. I've got some kind of weird lung disorder that's drowning me in fluid. I try to hit mute, but if I don't catch it in time, it's all of a sudden like someone's just tickled you. So apologies in advance. It only costs $5.95 a month, which is roughly the cost of a large coffee per month. That's it, to get access to the Freedom Slips archives. Now, and you can check out her shows, our shows, and all the host shows when you do that. Mackie and I, I think he's going to reboot or do something. He is currently, that's what I'm saying, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where we live, where I live. It's the Dargan Jung. That's a hyphenated 2-word name. And Mackie says he can't hear me. He's gone, and I'm on my 4G cell, he says. No way, it's my connection, he says. Well, you've disappeared off the call. I'm going to add you back again. I didn't drop you, so that's something else. We'll have to deal with that. It's our own technical problems. All right. Hello. Now I'm just finishing off the intro, so just bear with me. So Mackie and I, where Mackie lives, it's the Garuk people, and there was a mob. It's called a mob. That's their social structure within a small, tight community. Next, their communal name called a mob, and everywhere there's pockets around. I've actually come across a map recently that showed all of the language distinctions in each one of their jurisdictions, and they were large jurisdictions, and they would burn certain parts of their, as true custodians of the land, they would burn it to take away all the foreign species, to rejuvenate the land, because that's how it rejuvenates. In Australia, believe it or not, the gum trees germinate because of fire. They actually learned how to deal with that method of management. And so they would burn certain areas and it would clear it, allowing them to walk safely through. It would kill most of the spiders and they move the snakes on, and they were able to basically tend to the environment in a really nice way. Now, when we turned up, it looked fantastic, right? Now, not so much. Now, we don't know what we're doing. We just build concrete over the top of everything. We build houses and roads and buildings. But we have to remember that these lands have had stories passed down from generation to generation 240,000 times. That's per generation discussion. And their memory and use of the land, to tend to it, to live off what looks like, let's just call it, inhabitable land, where no obvious food sources are available, they were able to live quite happily. Now, if only we had that mentality, if only we had the capability and the knowledge to be able to do that, I think it would be a different world. It certainly would be, from my point of view. Meki, welcome to our show.
Hey, buddy. I'm actually on my 4G phone. Next week, we're going to try to dial in through me, and I'll pull you in. I want to know where the lag sits.
Yeah, cool.
It may be between us. It could potentially be between us. You're on NBN, right?
Yeah, I've got an 82 by 26 connection, and it's almost zero latency.
Yeah, that's weird. So the lag is between us, not from you back, and not from me to the States, because my connection to Solaris is brilliant, to the States. It's weird, right? But we are number 80, everybody. If you're listening in Australia, we are number 80. I think it is 80. As far as broadband connectivity is concerned, we are 80 on the global list of countries, which puts us pretty much at the bottom. Well, toward the end of the field. Singapore is number 1, 10 times the speed.
I have a problem, Mackie, and my problem is not being able to think of 80 different countries. I couldn't write down 80 countries, but they've got better internet than us. No, I'm making a joke.
Well, altogether, they're with all the you can. With all the changes recently in history and all that, whatever politics, there's been now about 180 odd countries in the world with all the breakaways, and sometimes it's hard for me to keep track. A couple countries split in half, others reunited. It's just crazy, right? Anyway, but the point is, we are number 80, Dave. 80, and you're right.
And Tartaria is above us.
There's some of the Balkan states, former Eastern Communist countries, they're above us. Yeah. It's hilarious. You're thinking, okay, that's awesome. No, we have a completely mismanaged country. I don't care who's listening, and my phone is listening to me all the time anyway. That's going to happen here, right?
Yeah, it does.
My phone, right?
I'm doing that right now. Yeah.
I know. But yeah, look, we don't have it. Go on.
We don't, and look, that's just the state of play. We're soon to face some both state and federal elections, and we could see some changes in the country, but we won't see the result of the governmental change for at least until it's the gift period near the end of their sit. So that's going to be a bit of a shame.
So, sorry, that's a no. We're not going to see any change. The reason there was this great meme, again, I saw it online. There's a picture of a crinkle cut chip and of a ruffle cut chip. So the ruffle cut is sort of more jaggedy. It's more like triangles, whereas the crinkle cut, it's more like a wavy kind of cut, right?
Wave.
And that's the difference between the political parties. We have here, crinkle cut or the other one. So it makes no difference. I mean, they're the same chip. They taste the same. They look a bit different, but it's exactly the same chip. None of them are good for you, right? Full of cholesterol, salt, all the bad trans fats. No good. And what you should do is you toss both of those chip packets out, and you go for like a hummus chip or something, some made with black beans or anything that's good for you. None of this is good for you. So I'm saying nothing will change until we pick them all.
Corn. There's a new wheat and corn chip.
That's good.
That's really nice.
Actually, rye is. You should eat rye bread if you can. It's much better for you. Trust me. Rye, not wheat. Rye. It's a German thing. Rye, or spelled even. But yeah, no, we nothing will change. Yes, that's right, Jabanu. But it's really quite disturbing to see just how badly we mismanaged. Dave, just one very quick thing that you probably saw on the news as well. They're now this debating of whether or not children should be brought from the detention centers to be treated, who should accompany them, and this is all in the wake of this of all the I guess scandals you want to say, right? In Melbourne, a church or cathedral or whatever it was, was going to put on a prayer for Cardinal Pell.
That's right.
Now, not in the past. Right now, for God to help him in his troubles, right?
Post his criminal conviction, however, it's preceding his appeal.
Yeah, no, I understand he's still appealing, but he's been found guilty once. Okay, now it might be overturned on appeal, but right. Yeah. But exactly, right now he's a convicted pedophile. Right now. I mean, tomorrow it might be overturned by his cronies, as it were, but that's okay, And it's upside down. Our former Prime Minister, John Howard, came forward as a character witness in his favor. They're putting on prayer sessions for him. At the same time, they don't allow David Icke because he's an anti-Semite, right? Which he isn't. And now they've also gotten Milo out of this. So they're not giving a visa. Milo, you probably heard him. He's extremely right-wing, right? The funny thing about that is, Dave, though, right-wing commentators and news complained here in Australia, and now it looks like the government is going to overturn the decision to in fact will give him now, I think, a visa to come into Australia. He said that I think lesbianism is a disease or something, right? He's not a nice guy, don't get me right, but you got to ask yourself, if you overturn and let him in, right, with all his views, and he is inflammatory, he will cause some issues, right?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
You deny David Icke. Come on, all the guy says is there's some reptilian shapeshifters running the world. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to agree with it. But he's not telling us to go and find the shapeshifters and burn down their house. Okay, he's not telling us that.
No.
Right? It's an insane thing here, but it also shows you how powerful the ADL is, So
yeah, it shows you who's in power.
Thing.
It shows you who they're willing to side with, and we don't know what's going on in the back end, right? Behind closed doors here, and who's talking to who, and they've gone, hang on, you can't ban him. He agrees with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really, really what we're asking here. I mean, that's the big question. Why would they, do a 180 on Milo and not on David Icke? And I mean, truth be known, there must be something that's in their favour for him to be there. And look, there's an election coming up, and maybe it's that last-ditch effort to be able to get him to, maybe they're giving him the script. We'll let you in, but here you go. Here's this thing. We want you to mention some of these things. Remember the climate change thing, man? That doesn't exist, right? So you can bag that out all you like. We have marriage equality. So, there's something to the current governing party, even though it killed them to do it, they allowed that to happen. So that's something. To me, it's just astounding, right? That the strength of some lobbyists. And I was listening to someone this week talking on one of the million things that I listen to every week. And they said something really extraordinary. And this was it's a young person, which had me, back on only 2 legs of my 4-leg chair. I was so surprised to hear them talking about the positive nature of a union, where big business has lobbyists, right? There's the industries that have lobbyists, but the people don't have lobbyists. And the only way for the people to have a lobbyist is not to form a company and run as a corporation, but to do that through the union movement, right? And this wasn't a union member, card-carrying member either. This was someone who was attempting to put a really good point forward, and that was about climate change. See what I did there? What they were trying to do was say that the people themselves, like the school children in America, have put a class action against the government, the federal government, to say, you failed to protect us as school kids in their generation from climate change. You've actually failed. Now, if it gets to the federal court system in the US, and it wins, it's only an if, then it would cause the government to hypercare that generation and to fast track anything and to protect them to save themselves from further lawsuits. Isn't that an extraordinary method in which to have the government act? Is litigate against the government?
Well,
because
actually, it's America, right?
It is America, and I know it's the land of litigation. But the only thing is that the government, to save themselves from being litigated against, would have to prove that climate change wasn't a thing, and that's where they've got them. So, because I think that's not a provable case. And I think that's the beauty. When I heard that story, I was flabbergasted that someone had finally done it. And if that's what it takes, because of the governments don't want to change. We know that there's a lot of controlling party and a lot of interest from big corporations and mining and power and all these things that go on when you're in that space, and they're very influential. And if I was to say, Mekhi, if you and I were in opposing parties, right, in government, and I would say, well, because I'm not in power, 100% renewables, I can say what I want. I'm not in power. I'm the opposition. But Mekhi goes, oh, that's pretty hard. I don't think we can do that, because most of our lobbyists are all big coal and the how am I going to do that? How? And I think that would be a really hard thing to play when you're in power. Mekhi?
No, I agree. It's the thing. The problem, of course, is that we are so tracked now, or we're so the ruts. That's the word. Everything is in such a rut, and rut comes from a cart, making a rut or a furrow into a roadway, right? That it's hard for us to get out of it. You can't get out of a rut. And like I said, again, the only way you get out of a rut is if you turn over the cart, or you lift the cart and move it somewhere else, or you destroy the road that's on. But my point is, it has to be significant and potentially catastrophic change, right? I mean, for the longest time, I thought that you can change the system from within, but the system is actually self-correcting, Dave. The system is self-regulating.
It's like that liquid
it's set up to be completely. Oh yeah, that's right. It's self-healing, right? I mean, anything that comes up, it'll either swallow, right, or spit out.
Yeah.
It's nothing that will upset it in the long term, and it's like a mindless behemoth that's rumbling down the road. It's bureaucracy at its best. It's not a single person, right? So the elite is smart. I mean, they know people. Let's face it. Let's take a step back, understand human beings for a second. Human beings love routine. We love routine. Okay. We love to do the same thing over and over and over. Vogue on poetry. That's right, Dave. We are. We are. That's who we are. We like routine. We don't like job, and we hate change. We love routine. We hate change. Those two go hand in hand. They're the exact opposite ends of the same scale: change and routine. And the one thing that we will fight against the most is change. So you put something in place that guarantees routine, good, bad, or indifferent, right? You can get used to it. Believe it or not, people get used to being in prison. In fact, they get so used to it, they become institutionalized. If you spend several decades in prison, and that's most people, not everybody, but most people, you become institutionalized. That means you can no longer live on the outside. You can no longer live on the outside without people telling you what to do, because you've gotten so used to the routine. And we are all, and again, I'm coming back to the hypothesis here, we're all in a big prison here. This is a big prison. We're in a cage, it's a box, whatever you call it, right? I don't care, the great machine, the evil panopticon, it doesn't matter what you call it, but we're in it. And so we love the routine of it. We pay taxes. We go, so this is it. We're born, we study, we learn, we grow up, we marry, we have children, we work, we go to work for 40, and then we, maybe retire for 5, 10, 20 years if you're lucky, and then you die. That's it. That's the routine. That's what everybody's buying into. Is that the way life should be? No, it is not. It is not. Interesting, millennials, some of them are taking a different route. Unfortunately, what they're doing, that they're sort of parasitically living off the rest of society, because their lifestyle, living like in a tiny little hut and driving around the countryside and that stuff, that's only possible because the rest of society is working and keeping the infrastructure alive, right? So, there's this another thing that's coming into this. We saw of work, a massive surplus. We're going into automation. There was a McKinsey report here in Australia published last week that says, I think by 2030, here, 5 to 6 million people will be out of work, or 5 to 6 million people will no longer be required in the workforce. Now, there are 26 million people in Australia, okay? So our workforce at best is between 10 and 15 million people, right?
Yep.
At any given time. So that means half our workforce will no longer be required. Now, you overlay it over the global thing. That's not every country, of course, but it's quite a few countries. We're talking about tens or even scores of millions of people out of work. That's a lot. Okay. Look, I'll let you talk about the living wage in a second, dude. But we are talking about a massive oversupply of labor. People say, "Oh, we're going to free up, all the workforce to do more interesting things. All the auto and all the repetitive tasks. They're boring. They're so boring. Nobody wants to do that." Yeah, you do if you get a paycheck for it. Because guess what? There's nothing else you can do, right? If you haven't had a proper education, maybe you never learned a trade. But even if you did, even if you went to university, even if you studied your little hindsight off, you will still be made redundant, because whatever you do, if it's any kind of routine or repetitive task, you're gone. They're talking about the medical profession. They're talking about chefs, like cooks and such. Because robots, if you were programmed to do something, they will do it exactly like that every single time. Exactly. If it requires creativity or artistry or creative thinking, right? That's a different thing. We're not quite there yet. But if it's repetitive, a robot will do your job better than you any day of the week. Any day of the week. And forget John Henry here, okay? I mean, that was a fluke, and he died. Let's not forget. He actually died in his duel with the steam engine, okay? He showed us the way, but in the end, the machine is going to eat us up. So what's going to happen with the surplus labor? Massive unemployment, right? All of a sudden, the depopulation agenda seems a lot more sensible, doesn't it? All of a sudden you go, well, if I reduce the world's population to 500 million, I don't have an unemployment problem, because everybody should be gainfully employed. Because if you think about it, if I get rid of 7 billion people, 7 billion, maybe 7 and something, right?
Yeah.
I don't have an unemployment problem, because I've automated everything, and that's where it's driving to as well. Don't forget that, this is crazy stuff. Getting everything you can get, okay? So they've always been looking for a way to get rid of a lot of us, okay? Because we still have the power, and we still get rid of a lot of us, and maybe the awareness cascade won't happen if we don't have a number. They can rule until at the end of time. And once they've got to the stage of automation, where they actually don't need us anymore as a workforce, think about the ultimate dream of the elite. Have some of us around, 500 million or so, that's okay, and there's a few of them. And the rest of us gone, replaced by machines, algorithms, and robots and so forth. Dave, that's insane. But you can now see the plan unfolding, right? So we're thinking automation brings about a better life for everybody, less work for everybody, blah blah blah. It's the other way around. They wanted to find a way they could reduce the population without having an impact on their life. That's what the elite really wants, and that's where we're at.
That sums it up. That is absolutely the place that they're taking us. They just had to wait for us to get here, because you couldn't replace us with automation 20 years ago. That was a dream, right? It's never going to happen. Right now, we're at a place where, well, it can be, but we can't all be artists, because we'd require a living wage for us to live, and that living wage has already been trialed. Where was it? Norway, Scandinavia, or somewhere? Mackie, they trialed the living wage, and
they did.
Our government is currently talking about that as a future option. So this is the opposition, I know the Labour Party were talking about this. And they're talking about it because we're right on the doorstep of automation and job replacements. I've seen a factory begin automation. I've seen it firsthand. I know what it looks like. And I know that the only reason we employ people is because machine or a computer can't do it. They fill the gap. They're the swivel chair, right?
Yes, that's right.
On what it is that we need to do as an output. And, I'm glad you unpacked that, Mickey, because that's really important. That the 500 million on the stones that it says is a crucial amount of people to manage. I mean, they've done their maths. And worked out what the actual amount of people how many would it be? I still think 500 million is a lot of people. It's certainly not what we got now, but I think it would be hard to match your revenue. You'd just be selling to all the people all the time. Any product that you make, you'd just be part of that system or environment. I think innovation would be a really hard pressed thing to go forward after that, because you wouldn't be paying for scientists. We've done it all. They closed the book on trying to make it better. Why would you bother? I mean, honestly, why would you bother? If the elites stay in their role and the governments get reduced down because there's less people, there's less maintenance, less all of these things, you could automate the maintenance. The living wage, look, as long as I can pay my house off and I've got my family and it's still okay, and maybe I'm the one with the golden ticket who gets to stay alive, right? Because I don't know how they're going to work out how not to do it, or maybe they're already doing it. Maybe there's already a plan to depopulate the planet.
So hang on. So to be clear,
because I've progressed, Mickey. I've agreed with you. Yep. How do you get down?
No, yeah, I know, but see, the thing is, if 7 point something, right, 7.3, 7.2 doesn't really matter, were to die, or the population were to drop within a couple of generations to that level, which it's all it would take if there was some kind of infertility. It would only take a couple of generations to everything would collapse. So forget paying your mortgage. There would be no more mortgage. That'll all be gone, right? Mm-hmm. It'd be a completely different system that would have to be introduced. It would no longer be a system that we know today. It'll be more akin to a feudal system, I should say. And they would make sure that they have the might on their side, right? They would make sure they have the armed troops. I mean, look at the police forces, for crying out loud, around the world. They look like paramilitary. They do. All right, come on, completely. Yeah. I mean, look at. In fact, I love watching The Walking Dead, and in Fear the Walking Dead, there's a reporter who's driving in this armored vehicle. And it's actually, she said, I took it from a SWAT team in Atlanta or something. Yeah, SWAT team. It's an armored freaking vehicle. And you can launch an RPG against it. It'll be okay, right? This is the police equipment we have these days. How many protesters in the street, Dave, do you see carrying RPGs here in Australia or even in the States. Even in the States, not a lot.
Very few. Very few.
Right? Look, there's this. Dave wants to talk about Venezuela, so I'll give him the floor, which is actually a very interesting situation right now, right? Venezuela is holding the largest oil reserves in the world. Forget Saudi Arabia, it's actually Venezuela. Not only that, something I want to do a show on the peak oil. Remember peak oil?
Yeah.
We talked about the late 90s, early teens. Nobody is talking about peak oil anymore. It was a huge topic in Nexus magazine and all the conferences I went to back in the 90s, right? And like in the early noughties as well. Peak oil was the thing, not a peep about peak oil. So sorry, peak oil was a theory that we had reached the peak of oil production. From here on in, there would be less and less oil available. I'm talking about, obviously, that has not happened. It hasn't happened. And people actually said that peak oil was a complete bogus, right? It was complete nonsense. And that seems to be the case. Peak oil just never happened. Not really. It's been 20 years since they said that peak oil had occurred, right? I do want to dedicate a show to peak oil and what happened there, Dave, because we can't forget what went before, right?
You're right.
Please go ahead and talk about Venezuela. Then I want to talk about Malaysian Airlines for a second after that.
Awesome. Okay. So, and I also want to mention Dr. Robin Falkov passed away last week or during the week, and she'll be sorely missed. One thing I do like that Facebook have done is allowed to turn her page into a memoriam. So you can go to her Facebook. If you're not a friend, you may not be able to get to it, but that's something special. I just want to bring that up, all right? So if there's anything that the station owner will engage in, it'll be to support her husband. So it's just tough times. Tough times. If you live in Venezuela, they're exceedingly tough. Hyperinflation. I mean, going back to 2 days apart, and something's went from $100 to $1 million, and that it's just the same value, all right? It buys you the same amount of stuff now. The million that used to be 100. The thing that I found, I saw a story, and I've been following this for a while. I've seen now prominent US actors talking up what people are really missing, the point about Venezuela, that we can't just go and install someone and claim that they're the new leader without it. That's a coup, right? We can't accept that as the new leader. We shouldn't. And we've had the same thing off the shore of Australia every couple of years, whereas, Fiji's now some new military guy is running it. But what they did, the government turned off the power for 2 days in an attempt, in my opinion, to dissuade or remove the semblance of people from the protests. Because with social media, what's the easiest way to kill it? Turn off the power. You got nothing. 1 day in, everyone's power's gone. No one's got any social media anymore. And so their ability to assemble, it looked like it was unabated. I saw them using live rounds and tear gas on them now. And also in France, I saw they've switched that up now to having live rounds against the yellow vests. That's something else. So I'm going to hand the floor back to Meki. Venezuela is a real big issue, and this is one of those turning points that when you're thinking in your country, not that I'm inciting violence, but if it turns upside down like Venezuela has, whatever that outcome is in their country could be the outcome in your country when it happens to you. If the people win, which I don't think they're going to let happen, but if the people won, then everyone would go, hey, we can just storm our government. We could win that. That's how easy it was, right? You lost a couple of 100,000 people. That doesn't matter, but you still win. And I don't think they're going to let it happen. I think we're watching right now to see what's happening. And Meki, every single day that goes by, I'm more and more convinced that the Mayans were right, that the dark rift is actually the unsettling of, through some kind of resonance in this part of space that we travel through, that completely disables our ability to empathize with the opposition. Because that's the only thing that stops a war from happening. And right now, people are on such tenterhooks that everything's explosive.
Yeah, look, that's true. I think it's certainly possible. I mean, fundamentally, our brains are electrochemical machines, right? I mean, it looks like there might be some quantum level of activity, and I believe, in fact, it's only a four-dimensional expression of a high-dimensional being. But that's beside the point. But you're right. Anything can affect an electromagnetic or electrochemical machine, really, right? And it could be. We know we go through different. Okay, flat Earth is notwithstanding, we're traveling at phenomenal speed through the universe. Yeah. Okay, we are, and we're traveling through different sectors of the galaxy, the universe itself, and different laws of physics might be operating, different levels of radiation, whatever. I mean, we don't know. We just don't know. And you're right. It's quite possible that could affect us this way. It would explain why things have happened in the past. We talked about the tools down event. I mean, why would a civilization down tools? Maybe there was a catastrophe, or maybe it was just some kind of happening, like M. Night Shyamalan in his movie indicated. Something just happens and we just stop for some reason. Maybe our brains stop functioning properly. Who knows? I don't know. But it certainly is something that's worth thinking about. Now, just one last thing on Venezuela before I jump onto MH370. Venezuela was the only country of its wealth to ever nationalize the oil industry, or anything for that matter, right? So Hugo Chavez nationalized all of the oil companies in Venezuela. He was a massive thorn in the side of everybody else, all the oil producers, America, Europe, the OPEC, everybody. And he was a problem. He nationalized it. And all the Venezuelans that are clambering and were talking about him being a horrible tyrant and dictator in America, they were all the people he had dispossessed. These were the rich people that used to run Venezuela. Okay, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. His country, and he did a lot for other countries as well, for Cuba and so forth. So let's not forget that. So the country failing so spectacularly right now, that's an object lesson to the rest of the world. Don't you dare nationalize your oil industry or anything else for that matter. It's an object lesson, okay? They're not getting any help, okay, because they have to be made an example of, in the same way that Haiti is made an example of. The successful rebellion of a slave colony against its masters. That's Haiti, okay? No other slave colony in the world was successfully rebelled. Similar nation is Liberia. Liberia, which was founded by freed, right? Which was founded by freed slaves, which also is now a completely failed state. These nations have been made an example of. Haiti, Venezuela, and Liberia. Look at the state of them now. Okay? This is what can happen when you piss off the wrong people, right? Mm-hmm. This is not a coincidence. This is not something happened. No, these are some very specific targets. 3 countries: Haiti, slave revolt against the French, successful. Look at them. Liberia, freed slaves coming back from the States, founding a nation in Africa, failed state. And now Venezuela, only nation ever to nationalize the failed state. If you turn off the electricity for 2 days, that's pretty much a failed state as far as I'm concerned, right? So that's just a side observation. So just bear in mind, that's the power you're dealing with, okay? That's who your enemy is. And now 5 years, and this is actually an article from abc.net in Australia, so our ABC, the Australian Broadcast Corporation. So this is not from a conspiracy side, this is from a mainstream media side.
So this is MH370, right? And this is 5 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly 5 years, my friend. Now, I have not been successful to get into the chat. Funny enough, I can go to the other website, so I'll paste the link here there for you, my friend. That's perfect. I've just done that now. There you go. Anyway, so 5 years after Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 disappeared, we still don't know what happened to the plane or and don't forget there were 239 people on board. So we have no idea what happened there. And despite years of effort and the multinational search in Asia and the Indian Ocean that became the most expensive in aviation history, we may never find out what happened. Following the most recent and fruitless search by U.S. exploration firm Ocean Infinity, that ended in May last year, the Malaysian government announced this week that there would be no extensions to that particular underwater expedition, though the search could be resumed if Ocean Infinity or another company puts forward a viable proposition in the future. Right now, the hunt to look at MH370. Right, but we are not completely clueless, the article says. Researchers are pretty sure the main body of wreckage would have ended up in either the south of the Indian Ocean, or where the main search efforts have been concentrated, or off the coast of Madagascar. Various pieces of debris have washed up, they say. Many, though, this isn't enough. The questions of the disappearance of MH370 have left us with, coupled with inconclusive search findings, prompted to fill the theories. And while many are outlandish and plausible, experts say there are reasons why people believe them. And we know why, because nature abhors a vacuum, and we will fill it with information if we can. How not as outlandish as you might think. Okay, so the conspiracy theorists have considered pretty much every possible explanation for the plane's disappearance, right? From claims it was cloaked by invisibility technology to the idea that it was hijacked by North Korea. One of the most outlandish conspiracy theories claimed MH370 was hijacked for the organs of Chinese citizens on board, given 153 of the 239 people on the plane were Chinese. In December last year, former Fox executive Darlene Tipton claimed she had a hard drive with data on it that proved MH370's disappearance was directly linked to organ harvesting in China. Ms. Tipton claimed the plane was targeted because a large number of those on board were part of Chinese spiritual group Falun Gong, which is banned in China. And the truth is, Falun Gong is massively persecuted in China. It's bad. It's actually really, really bad. You should look at that and do some research into Falun Gong. Now, remember, this is former Fox executive Darlene Tipton that says this. Another theory which gained credibility among some news organizations, despite evidence pointing to the contrary, there always is, claimed MH370 crashed in the jungle. This conspiracy theory was put forward by video producer Ian Wilson, who claimed to have seen the Boeing 777-200 sitting intact in the jungle on Google Maps. Now, one of the most creative conspiracy theories, that rapper Pitbull predicted predicted MH370's disappearance after the 2014 incident. Some YouTube viewers claimed the lyrics of the singer's 2012 song is Pitbull. It started for the event. This is what he said. Pitbull raps the following. It's a quote. Now it's off to Malaysia, 2 passports, 3 cities, 2 centuries, 2 countries, 1 day. Proponents of this theory have linked the lyric 2 passports to stolen Austrian and Italian passports 2 Iranian passengers used to board the plane, while the 3 cities refer to the capitals of Malaysia, China, and Vietnam. That's an outlandish one as far as I'm concerned. Okay. One of the latest theories claims a secret love affair between MH370 Captain Zahari Ahmed Shah and his reported mistress Rina. And that was the reason for the plane's disappearance. In his new book, The Hunt for MH370, journalist Ian Higgins presented several theories, one which claimed that Captain Shah brought the Malaysia Airlines plane down so he and his mistress could assume stolen identities in an obscure but pleasant Asian country. Going by this theory, the pilot arranged for 2 stolen passports for him and his mistress and packed his flight kit with unnecessarily warm clothes for the time of year, as well as waterproof torch, whistle, and parachute. Around an hour into the flight, the theory goes, Captain Shah depressurized the plane, knocking passengers out, before removing cash from the wallets of those on board to help fund the couple's life on the run. Captain Shah then allegedly controlled the plane as it descended to 3,000 feet and opened an exit door. A life jacket before he parachuted down to the ocean and near a fishing boat that had Rina at the helm, ready to rescue him. As this was happening, the conspiracy theory claims MH370 flew on autopilot towards the southern Indian Ocean, where it eventually crashed. That's probably not so likely, but not so plausible. Social media entered to legitimacy. The conspiracy theories around, MH370 do not exist in a vacuum, though, right? And in 2014, University of Chicago study estimated at least 50% of Americans believed at least one conspiracy theory. Now, we've already talked about this. Sometimes it's not a conspiracy theory; it's just a conspiracy fact. Right? We should understand that we don't know everything. And what really concerns me here is that it's been 5 years, Dave, and I mean, I've only shared these with you because some of them are quite outlandish. Some of them are maybe on the money. I know there's one which wasn't mentioned in the article, and that said it had actually landed in an American naval base in the southern Indian Ocean. And there were some pictures. Right. Correct, and apparently one of the people on board had managed to send an SMS from that naval base. So, and it was actually tracked to his phone, right? So that was apparently true enough. It was his phone that had sent it, and he had been on board. So, and had been pinpointed that it was sent from the base. That conspiracy theory pretty much disappeared, though. So, did it in fact land? You know, what happened to the passengers? Yeah, 200. Okay, 239 people gone. Okay, most of them, 150 are Chinese. They're gone. They're no longer with us. Or maybe they are. It disappeared. And it's been 5 years. No plane has ever gone missing since they had black boxes in this fashion. Record. It just hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
It's impossible unless some kind of or something like that hit the plane, completely vaporizing everything. Right. In that case, okay, you go, fair enough. Everything is vaporized. Okay, that's cool. But these black boxes, right? They transmit, they stay alive, and they're virtually indestructible. I mean, you know, but that's not just the one of them, right? There's at least a couple on each plane as well, and it was installed, you know, ostensibly to find out what goes wrong in a plane crash, right? I mean, what happened to leading up to it? So it was mandated to be installed, especially by the insurance companies, believe it or not, to have that on there, so you know, so that it doesn't happen again. So whatever went wrong, we can now analyze and make sure it never happens again. It really worries me that a plane NH can disappear, and this is not some remote part. This is in Malaysia or Southeast Asia. Singapore is one of, which is right near them, by the way, and KL as well. These are some of the busiest airports. Okay, there's planes coming in and out all the time, all the time. Okay, if there was something fundamentally wrong with that area or that part of the world, planes would be disappearing all the time as well. This is a very specific case, and it just doesn't make any sense, Dave. That's why I want to bring a bit of an update here, right?
Yeah.
But you know, again, so what the article focuses on, you know, of course, is the conspiracy theories. But it's interesting that they're now being given. You know, I'm not saying they're given credence, but they're certainly being considered and they're being talked about because we have no other information. You know, we have no other information.
You're absolutely right. So in a vacuum, you try and fill it with things that make it credible. And the Aerialon that I'm staring at in the image is not, and according to the French avionics experts, you know, the research people into the research crashes, they've not confirmed that it was a piece of MH370. They said it was from the 777, and that's the limit that they went to confirming it. So they didn't say it was part of the aircraft, but they said it was part of the same model aircraft. That's all.
It's a quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a very important quote here that I need to share with you. Hopefully I've got some time. So University of Kent psychology professor Dr. Karen Douglas said while the internet hadn't increased the number of conspiracy theories and conspiracy believers, it had enabled the deepening of conspiracy theorizing. She told the ABC, rather than conspiracy theories spreading around the internet indiscriminately, the internet helps form distinct and polarized conspiracy communities online, which is true. People read and share evidence with like-minded people. And ignore evidence that contradicts their view. It's a confirmation bias. Dr. Cody, though, this is another researcher, took this further, saying the negative perception of conspiracy theories had increased in recent years thanks to the rise of social media. Now, this is important. The use of the negative, pejorative term conspiracy theory has increased, and I think that has unreasonably deterred people from postulating conspiracies, which may be otherwise quite plausible because conspiracies really do happen, he said. So the negative connotations that the word has automatically prejudiced us against them. But like he said, they do actually happen. Conspiracies are a thing. They do happen, right? We just have been taught to think that anybody who says conspiracy theory is a nut. That's incorrect. incorrect. That is incorrect. This is coming from someone that's part of the establishment here as well, which is interesting.
This
is really the most important.
Absolutely true. What Mekhi said, and it hurts me.
It's crazy.
It does hurt me to say that I don't believe in the the new one, the harvesting of organs, but that's because I have seen no evidence on it yet. I find that a little difficult to believe, because you can just pick up anyone on the street and harvest their organs rather than bring a plane down.
Exactly. Makes no sense.
But if you've got patented material or ownership changes, you've got a cloak plane. There's the break music.
There's the music. If you can
donate everywhere on the website. On the Revolution Radio website. We'll be back in a short time. It's not Jebez's show, it's ours, continuing for one more hour.
Slips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back with David Mekhi's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com on the #1 listener talk supported talk radio on the net. I said talk twice. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5 per month. In Australia, it's $5.95 because the conversion rate. I'd like to say hello to all of the new listeners we have today on the radio. We're glad you're aboard. So whether it is that you follow, subscribe, like, or otherwise, we hope to make your journey an easy one, or at least ease you into the water. We provide a bunch of material, and you can still make your own decision. This is show number 365. That's a whole year's worth of weekly shows. Think about that for a sec. This is almost up to our 8th year on air. And
no, we're there.
We're there. Awesome. I like being there, wherever that is.
No, it's 8 years, my friend.
8 years.
Because it was March that we started.
Yeah, that's right. Wow.
So 360. Like I said, it's filled up a year, right? And it's insane. In fact, 5, 6 years. Yeah, that's about right. Jesus, it's Jesus. Yeah, that's perfect. The segue there. No, but we are in our 8th year on the air, and I'm looking at the show notes here for today. It's got 33 pages. We're halfway through it. The Giants show notes it stands currently at 79 pages. Just to let you all know, I have to trim it a bit more. Sorry, 75 pages. Dave.
That's going to be so awesome. It's going to be awesome.
Giants.
Hey, Mekhi, I just
what? Yeah, I think so.
I just wanted to say something, not off the back of what the last topic was, which was MH370, which is still an amazing mystery. But how we've spoken about climate refugees. Now, I saw a show this week talking about what those numbers are really meaning. And they're talking about maybe even the low 2 degrees average increase in temperature will be about 200 to 500 million. But if we went to 4 degrees, or even 5, maybe 6, 7, 8, right? We're looking at more than 1 billion people. And some countries whose temperatures, and they actually referenced Australia a number of times, spoke about places in the world which would be uninhabitable in summer. In fact, they said you won't be able to go outside. So the only time you could go outside is, maybe if you're lucky in autumn and spring and winter. That's the extent of it. But they're talking about the temperatures will be hitting 54.4 degrees Celsius or 130 Fahrenheit. At the moment, we're just on the cusp of 50 degrees. And that doesn't seem very far away now. And we know that they're underestimating, trying not to shock us. Just like, the smoking packets have shock value to try and deter you from it. Yeah? The skin cancer lobby shows very good reason why we shouldn't. We should always apply sunscreen. But the thing with the climate change is it actually turns people off when you shock them, going, oh, it's going to be so bad. In fact, it's going to be so terrible that you won't be able to go outside at all. So, I think, Mekhi, if automation doesn't do it, climate's going to do it anyway. Because just think
and that's interesting. I mean, some go on.
Oh, I'm just thinking, if, like in America, you have less homeless outside in the winter because they just become popsicles. Think about not being able to withstand the heat from outside. Talking about some places having 6 or 7 things occurring at once. So floods, epping heat, fires, famine, plague, wind, and sea level rise. All these things occurring at the same place. What?
So some people have argued, more or less successfully, that the climate change we're seeing is engineered. Not only is it human induced, but by accident, let's say, right? I mean, just an aftermath of the Industrial Revolution and all it brought with it, but rather deliberately orchestrated and organized. Because interestingly enough, if you look at, I'm not saying I believe that necessarily, but just since we're talking about it, every effort to use non-carbon-based forms of energy production have been actively opposed by various groups, right? Thwarted. And the science has been around for a long time. I mean, we know what happens. We're not stupid. And we can see what happens. Our modeling might be off, and we might have thought, oh, we've got, hundreds, maybe tens or hundreds of years yet to deal with it. And in fact, we've got just a few short years to deal with the issue at this point. But it has been argued that this is deliberate re-engineering of the world's ecosphere. Right up to the troposphere, and all the layers of air that we have, including the land and of course the oceans. So the entire ecosphere is being re-engineered to make life harder, or hotter, or whatever it may be, because it's tough to depopulate it to some extent, especially when you release pathogens or radioactive substances, chemical substances. There's always a fallout. And if, however, you can induce catastrophes, right? Like you've mentioned, my friend, and you're right, you could only live in certain places. The people that have wealth and power are going to be okay no matter what, right? I mean, worst case scenario, I know this is going to sound science fiction-y, but worst case scenario, if you had enough money, and we're seeing this now with Elon Musk, of course, you could go into space. If you have enough money, you can go into space. You can go and build a moon base. I submit here that there already is a base on the moon, right? Or several. I believe there are bases on Mars. Again, that's just me in the secret space program. I also believe that the moon itself is, in fact, not a natural heavenly body at all, for various reasons, which we've gone into in some detail in other shows. But so you would always be okay. It would always be okay if you're in charge. If you are, I guess, the person that's or the people that are running the show, then you should be okay. I'm not saying that you are immune to repercussions or ramifications. I mean, some might die after the elite, sure enough. But for the most part, you should be okay. And we've seen this in the past when you look at the ancient texts of the Sumerians and Babylonians, the Anunnaki. They were always okay. They brought about some catastrophes, but they were actually up in space. It says so. It's exactly what it says. They were in space or underground, right? That's what it said. We're not making this stuff up. And I had an interesting conversation the other day with someone in Melbourne. We just had a couple of beers in the oldest pub in Melbourne, in fact, which is pretty cool. But so we were talking, and the point was that you would always be okay if you're the elite. You would always be okay if you are the person that's in charge, because you're running the show. That was the point. And the other point was that we have so much knowledge in these ancient primary sources. Because for me, the Enuma Elish, and so forth, and all those cuneiform tablets are their primary sources. They're
That's
primary.
right.
Okay, someone saw something, whatever, they put it down onto the thing. They didn't fully understand what they saw, but they gave us a pretty good description. I consider the Bible a secondary or even tertiary source, because if you look at the story, the original story in the Enuma Elish, and again the Gilgamesh epic and so forth, and you look at what happens to it in the Bible, it has been, you can see how much data was lost, how much information was lost in the retelling in the Bible, in the Old Testament. There's a bucket load of detail that got lost. If you want the detail, go to the primary texts that are, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, I don't know how old they are. It could be older than that. The story could, they wrote it down 6,000, 7,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, whatever. But the story itself might be a lot older and had been handed down in other forms of media, maybe oral traditions, I don't know. But they're so rich in detail that I'm astounded. You have to, if you read these texts with modern eyes, and don't forget they're thousands of years old, they're talking about things like artificial wombs. Artificial wombs, what? But if you read it with today's eyes, you go, oh, that's an artificial womb, clearly. That's what that is, right? They're talking about unionization of the workforce, the gig,
right.
in a way, right? They're talking about hard work. They're talking about the creation of us, or our forebears, I should say, right? The Adamu. They're talking about that and how it happened and what they needed to do it. They talked about the very intricate political administrative system, right? Which was split into 3 main domains, which was I guess the sky domain, the earth, and then underground. And different people were in charge of building canals and different things. It's a very complex, and they didn't really like us very much, made too much noise, so they gave us that seemed like the common cold. But anyway, so go to the primary sources. It's really fascinating stuff, and I need to stress here that those people were always okay. And again, they will be okay when things go, and as they are. I mean, they will usher you away. They will take you to a safe place. They take you into outer space. They take you underground, wherever they need to go. And in fact, I would still believe that we on the surface, we're the fools, right? I think there's a whole different civilization happening underground, under the oceans and all that stuff, right? Which is well ahead of us. And we are just the poor cousins left on the surface of the planet, fending for ourselves, exposed to UV radiation all day long, weather all day long, all kinds of things happening on the surface that are beyond our control. I really believe that. I really believe that we are just, I don't know, we are an afterthought, an artifact, if you will, that had no place in civilized society, which is happening underground, on the moon, who knows where. I know we're getting very far with this, but everything is connected. You cannot underestimate the connections between everything. And then the longer you look at this, and this is why it's difficult to have a conversation like this, because Dave and I have been looking at this for 40 years each.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff, a lot of thinking that's gone into. We don't come to these conclusions easily. And it took a lot of evidence and a lot of thinking and analyzing to get to the point where we are, because none of this makes sense, Dave. None of the world actually makes sense the way it is. It just doesn't. And then you start digging and you start scratching, and you realize a lot of the things that we take as truths are just veneer. And this is why we're doing the show today, which is what happened to the lost years of Jesus. Because we just don't know. There's a lot of stuff you don't know.
So remember that a small phrase can gloss over the connection of a redacted paragraph. A small phrase to a paragraph or a page or even a whole book. And that's what we're bringing out here in this one, and we tend to do that with everything, and that's the real main point here. We see redaction from the government on FOIAs. We see the media only tell us a specific slant on things, so we're not. It's not a foreign concept to us, right? To understand that we're only receiving a specific amount of news or input, even at the hardiest of level. the lost years of Jesus, the information's out there. It was all there, but that wasn't the narrative.
Yeah. No, and in fact, the funny thing is this, and I do apologize for not being in the chat room. It's up today, but the narrative is very far removed from what other sources have said. So just to level set this before we go into the Jesus show for today, in 300 and I want to say 47 or 27 at the Church Council of Nicaea or Nicaea, all the church leaders in the world came together. It wasn't called the Catholic Church at that point; it was just the church. Right? There hadn't been a split yet, no chasm, just the one church. But with very many different belief systems and very many different ways of looking at the world, right? Because you had the East Roman Church, you had the West Roman Church, you had the Gnostics, you had a whole bunch of different belief systems within it. But they agreed, and the main, I guess, driven by the Romans or the Roman. Churches, the Western churches, chose the books for the Bible. All the books for the Bible, the New Testament, I should say, were chosen. The Old Testament was pretty much a straight copy from the Torah, but the New Testament, which chronicles the life of Jesus, was decided pretty much at that council. And there was a debate, which beliefs should be taken on, which should be left out. Reincarnation was out. Jesus having married was out. Jesus having children was out. Jesus being the Son of God was in. Jesus having died at the crucifixion was in. Jesus having died for our sins and gone to heaven was in. Any other stories around his brothers and so forth was out. There's very little left of it. Now, we were lucky, though, that some remaining texts were found. Talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found in Qumran, for example, but others as well, which give us the Gnostic view of the world, and they show us a very different Jesus. That's not his name, by the way. It was Jesus, the Romanized version of something, maybe Yeshua, we're not sure. So we need to understand that a lot of the information that was passed down to us was vetted. So it's absolutely, but rather than redacting it, they were just completely removed from the text, right? Because if it's redacted, then you know something that you're not allowed to see. Can't see it, right? But there was something there. Now we don't even know there was something there to be seen, right? But for 2,000 years we didn't know until we found the scrolls, Dead Sea Scrolls. There must be more. I mean, that was just a fluke, Dave. I mean, how much of a fluke was that? I mean, think about think about all the books and knowledge that was lost along the way. And this dude who found it didn't even know. He said he used some of it as fuel for his stove.
That's
some
right.
of his scrolls. He didn't know what he was doing.
They were the really important ones too.
Saying,
like how to activate.
Yeah, right.
How to learn and activate your flight capability.
Yeah, your Merkaba. Your own personal Merkaba. No, that's it. But it's interesting to realize this. It's interesting to be confronted with it. And I have the conversation today with people, and it's virtually impossible to have it because you cannot break through that shell of complete submission to the authority as far as knowledge is concerned. And these people then, they quote all the experts. This theologian in the 5th century said that, and that theologian in the 12th century said that. Yeah, but it's all on a house of cards, on a swamp gas reflection. That's a mirror image of Venus. That's what's happening here. It's not real.
A total rejection of any other point of view.
It is.
Sadly enough.
Which brings us to Jesus and Nesbane, right? So,
sure
Dave,
does.
tell us about Jesus and Nesbane.
Nesbane, previously known as Nassaburs, and now Urfa in southeast Turkey, is the next location along Jesus's route for which we have a recorded source. The reference comes from a well-known Persian historical work, the Rawzat us Safa, written by Mir Muhammad bin Kawand in 1417 AD. Kawand explains that Jesus was known for being a great traveller, something mentioned in other Islamic traditions, yet rarely talked about amongst Muslims. The author goes on to relate Jesus traveling from the Holy Land to Nazarban. Journeying from his country, he arrived in Nazarban. With him were a few of his disciples whom he sent into the city to preach. In the city, however, there were current wrong and unfounded rumors about Jesus, on whom be peace, and his mother. The governor of the city therefore arrested the disciples and then summoned Jesus, on whom be peace, is in brackets. Jesus miraculously healed some persons and exhibited other miracles. The king of the territory of Nazarene, therefore, with all his armies and his people, became a follower of his. Looking at a map, the location...
Sorry, just before you go on, Dave.
Go ahead.
Sorry, the reason... So this is something I need to explain very quickly. Whenever a prophet, a true prophet of God, or Allah is mentioned in text or even in speech, you have to follow it with the phrase "on whom be peace." It's like a respectful way of acknowledging Jesus' importance in the prophetic hierarchy. Muhammad gets the same treatment.
I shall not remove that phrase.
No. Sorry, but what I mean here is, so clearly this Muslim writer held Jesus in high esteem. Mm-hmm. That's my point, right?
I get that.
Sorry, go ahead, my friend. Yeah.
Looking at a map, the location of Nazarene at a distance of 450 miles from Jerusalem suggests that a route was being travelled upon leading from Jerusalem across ancient Persia, modern-day Turkey, Iran, and Afghanistan. Think about that long trip, right? Hadhrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, in his treatise Masi Hindostan Main, Jesus in India, explains, and there's a quote: "If the report in the Ruzat Usafa is correct, it appears that by travelling to Nazarene, Jesus intended to come to Afghanistan through Persia and to invite the truth the lost Jews had come to be known as Afghans." Wow. Mekhi.
Jesus in Afghanistan. There's evidence to suggest that modern-day Afghanistan is home to some of the lost tribes of Israel that Jesus searched for throughout his life. O.M. Burke, an explorer of Sufism, presents a fascinating insight into a group of people in Afghanistan that describe themselves as Christian Muslims and recount traditions of Jesus' visit to their tribe almost 2,000 years ago. The followers, and this is a quote here, the followers of Isa, son of Maryam, Jesus, son of Mary, generally call themselves Muslims and inhabit a number of villages scattered throughout the western area of Afghanistan, whose center is Herat. There must be about 1,000 of these Christians. Their chief is Abba Yahi, which means Father John, who can recite a succession of teachers through nearly 60 generations to Isa, son of Maryam of Nasara, which is Nazareth, the Kashmiri. During Burke's dialogue with Abba Yahya on Christian theology and the Bible, Abba Yahya made the following remarkable statement, and I'm quoting here. "My son," he said in his softly accented Persian, "these people are reading and repeating a part of the story. They have completely misunderstood the message. We have the story told to us by Master, in brackets Jesus, and through him we will be saved and made whole. Some of the events in that document which you call the Bible are true, but a great deal is made up for or imagined, or put in for less than worthy reasons. Isa lived for over 30 years after the materials you have were completed, and he told us what was true. The narration provides strong," this is the end of the quote, "this narration provides strong testimony about a community possessing both a written and oral tradition of Jesus traveling to Afghanistan after the crucifixion. While there's no indication that the story was fabricated, there exists no other known account mentioning this same community, along with their remarkable story. Burke explicitly vouches for the authenticity of his book, stating that it contains as high a proportion as possible of entirely fresh and first-hand materials. Reviews of his book seem to support him as a credible source also, with the Sunday Telegraph describing Burke as an accomplished travel writer. Despite this, critics demand more information on who he was and what his motivations for writing the book were, while questioning why the existence of this community Burke mentions cannot be validated by any other source. There are many other stories and traditions relating to the post-crucifixion story of Jesus Christ that require more research, and this account of Abba Yahia is certainly one of these. A modern-day expedition in search of this community would be a worthy anthropological exercise. Sorry, before I throw you Jesus in Pakistan, my friend, two things. One, it says that there were only about 1,000 of them. Okay, so this is a very small community, right? Secondly, sorry, part of the first point is that it's quite possible that in the recent troubles that we've experienced, they no longer exist, which would be a terrible shame. But then, they might still exist, which would be great. Another thing that we should know about, I am an avid watcher of Michael Palin and his travels. And he went he went through the Himalayas at one point, and he found the community. Now, it wasn't that he just went there. I mean, people know this community exists. And it was completely out of context with the rest of the people in the area. Well, ethnically even, there were some diversions, and there were blue-eyed and they were really quite an interesting ethno group that he encountered. Again, we're talking about the Himalayas here. And the story goes from the people themselves that they were the survivors or the remnants of a part of Alexander's army, right? So these were people that had been there for 2,500, 3,000 years potentially in the Himalayas, and they were the remnants of a part of the army of Alexander the Great. Even their traditions and cultural artifacts were very similar to what or at least what we think we know about how the ancient Greeks lived. Again, in the Himalayas. Very interesting stuff. So I'm not at all dissuaded that this community cannot exist. We have communities like this all over the place. There's an island in the Indian Ocean which hasn't been visited by anyone. And recently, in fact, a Christian missionary was killed by the inhabitants of this island. And they haven't had any contact with, modern civilization at all. Zero. They kill everybody that comes near the island. But that's just a side point. While it is only one source, I'm not dismissing it quite yet out of hand. Dave?
Yeah, good point. Jesus in Pakistan, that's Taxila. In Christian traditions, there exists the story of the Apostle Thomas travelling to India and preaching there. According to the lot, therefore, India fell unto Judas Thomas, which is also the twin. But he would not go, saying that by reason of the weakness of the flesh he could not travel. And I am an Hebrew man, how can I go amongst the Indians and preach the truth? And as he thus reasoned and spake, the Saviour appeared unto him by night, and saith to him, Fear not, Thomas, go thou unto India and preach the word there, for my grace is with thee. St. Thomas' alleged burial place exists in India today, and was visited by the last Pope, Pope John Paul II, in February 1986. With this in mind, it is fascinating to note that the Acts of Thomas, an apocryphal gospel, contains an account of Thomas and Jesus Christ together in Taxila, in what is modern-day Pakistan today, around the year, 49 AD it was. The account relates to a wedding ceremony where the groom thinks he sees Thomas, but it turns out to, in fact, be Jesus himself. The bridegroom, Abdagasis, lifted the curtain which separated him from his bride. He saw Thomas, as he supposed, conversing with her. Then he asked in surprise, How canst thou be found here? Did I not see thee go out before all? And the Lord answered, I am not Thomas, but his brother. Again, this reference is tantalizing. It is a literal appearance of Jesus, or is it some form of vision? Why does the author not make any mention of why Jesus was present at this point? Is Thomas being referred to as Jesus' brother another indication that the language is somewhat figurative? At face value, however, the narrative does place Jesus Christ along with Thomas in the East long after the crucifixion. Alone, the testimony raises questions, but when considered in conjunction with the other references, it starts to form a coherent and consistent picture. Mackie.
Now we're coming to Jesus in Kashmir, which I might explain why maybe Kashmir is such a disputed area, I should say, today. Finally, we come to Kashmir. And nearly all modern-day researchers who have traced Jesus' footsteps across the East have concluded their research with the Rosabal tomb in Kashmir, which we discussed earlier, and believe it to be Jesus' final resting place. In contrast to the scant concrete reference to Jesus in Afghanistan or Taxila, there are numerous references to Jesus in Kashmir, ranging from Hindu textual sources to archaeological artifacts. The Bhavisha Mahapurana, which is a Hindu source, the Bhavisha Mahapurana, one of the 18 major Hindu texts, is believed to originate from 115 AD. So, just under 2,000 years old. If this date is accurate, it's the time as the Gospels that make up the New Testament. The text begins with King Shalibahan, also known as Gautami Putra Satakarni, coming across an auspicious man in Ladakh, in Kashmir, dressed in white with fair skin. King Shalibahan's reign was from 78 to 102 AD. When asked by the king who he was, the man replies thusly, I am called a son of God, born of the Virgin, minister of the non-believers, relentless in search of the truth. This quote immediately brings to mind the person of Jesus Christ. If the account is accurate, it is a testimony to Jesus having lived to an old age and being present in Kashmir. The king asks further of his religion, and the reply given once again strongly links this figure with the person of Jesus Christ. This is what he said. O great king, I come from a foreign country where there is no longer truth, and where evil knows no bounds. In the land of the non-believers, I appeared as the Messiah, and I was called Isa Masih. The phrase Isa Masih is significant here, as Isa is one of the names attributed to Jesus in the Eastern traditions that mention him. This name appears in the Sanskrit text of the Bhavisha Mahapurana and is not a translation. Isa is also the name by which Jesus Christ is referred to in the Islamic tradition and throughout the Holy Quran. The Bhavisha Mahapurana is the most significant text placing Jesus Christ in Kashmir long after the crucifixion date.
Yeah, Tariq-i-Kashmir. The documented history of Kashmir is difficult to obtain and verify. One of the earliest known reliable compiled histories is a text called the Tariq-i-Kashmir, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, written in 1420 AD by Mullah Nadri. In this text, a figure known as Yus Asaf is mentioned. Evidence from additional sources suggests that Yus Asaf and Jesus Christ are one and the same person. Another text, Ikmal ud-Din, for instance, records Yus Asaf teaching via a parable. This parable is almost identical to the parable of the sower, as recorded in the Gospels, strengthening the link between Yus Asaf and Jesus Christ. Yus Asaf is described in this text as a prophet who had come from the Holy Land to this holy valley, the Valley of Kashmir, and devoted himself day and night in prayers to God. The text goes on to explain that during this time the Temple of Solomon, which can be seen today in Kashmir, had its roof repaired. The text also mentions an inscription which had been visible on the Temple of Solomon until recent decades, which stated, In these times, Yus Asaph proclaimed his prophethood on another stone. Another inscription mentioned in Mullah Nidri's work states that Yus Asaph was Yusu, prophet of the children of Israel. Mullah Nidri adds an additional note concerning the identity of Yus Asaph, although he draws no conclusion himself, saying that the true knowledge is with God. And I have seen, this is the author, I have seen in a book of Hindus that this prophet was really Hadrat Isa, which is Jesus, the Spirit of God, on whom be peace and salutations, and had also assumed the name Yus Asaph. The text goes on to state that Yus Asaph eventually died in Kashmir and is buried there. Wow. It just gets tighter, doesn't it, Mackie?
It's fascinating. So we want to talk about it. Now, again, we don't make claim thing, and the problem, of course, is as we share this, a lot of people are tightening up and thinking, oh, we are clearly Satanists, and Satan has inspired us to talk about Jesus and the crucifixion in this fashion, because the problem here is, Dave, and before I go on here, the problem is, and I said this before, that if this is true, right? I'm not saying it is, but if it were true, then the whole narrative of the Catholic Church, or in fact the Christian Church, sort of falls apart as it stands today. Not the original narrative of the Church, not the Gnostic narrative, right? Not the Manichaean, and not even the Cathar narrative. We're talking about the modern Christian churches. That falls apart, because if Jesus didn't die on the cross for our sins, then the whole thing collapses, and that's where the hate is going to be, right? I'm not saying, Dave is not saying that this is true. We're just sharing with you some of the research. So go ahead, Dave.
Well, you're right. And look, it's because the church bought a whole bunch of stock in the crucifixion, and he died for our sins. They bought a lot of stock in that, and that became the basis or the center of all of their doctrine. Unfortunately, I don't want to be rude. All I know is that having gone through the ringer in Christianity, there is a lot of sideways glances from people who I've discussed this with, who are currently already still remaining inside and attempting to believe it with all of their heart. But then you provide them with some information, and they don't want a bar of it. They don't want to know, and it's that instant rejection, Mackie, and that's what I was talking about. That's where I was able to pull that from, was my personal one-to-one experience with my friends. I'm saying, you know what, there's stuff out there. I know. I'm not saying your church is lying to you. I'm not saying that all of the ideals are wrong. I'm not saying none of that.
Yeah. In fact, is out there. We're just sharing it with you, right? So the worst thing that could happen is that we burn it all, right? I understand why people do book burnings. I get it. The reason is because if you burn all the knowledge, then you stand unopposed. Your knowledge is it. That's it. Your knowledge, if everything has gone away, you're the source of truth, right? That's what you want to be. But it's also very, 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 very dangerous. Yeah, you're right. That's exactly right, my friend. It's a shocking thing. And I understand that a lot of people are touched by this in a very negative way. Okay? If you're listening to the station already, then you probably have a more open mindset than most people. And then, again, we're not saying this is the truth. What I'm saying to you is there is a body of knowledge, or a body of research, a body of information out there that is different to what you may have been taught. Okay? It's different. It's different. It doesn't invalidate your belief system, okay? But some of the narrative may not be as you think it is. We had to give this preamble because now we're going to talk about the Quran, or the Holy Quran, right? So the Holy Quran talks extensively about Jesus Christ. The focus of the Quran is clarifying the status of Jesus Christ and emphasizing his humanity as well as piety. The Quran does not give many details about the life of Jesus Christ after the crucifixion, apart from the below key verse. And we made the son of Mary and his mother a sign and gave them refuge on an elevated land of green valleys and springs of running water. Believe it or not, that describes Kashmir to a T, but I'll give you more information from the text here. So, again, the Jews, of which Jesus was a part of, and the Muslims, which came, some 600 years later, after Christians, if you will, neither of them believed Jesus Christ to be the Son of God. The Muslims venerate him as a prophet in the line of all the great prophets. Yeah, I know there's some background noise, I apologize. Thin walls, my friend. It's like having your phone all over, right? It doesn't really matter if you've got a phone on, everybody listens all the time. The Jews never really accepted Jesus as anything, to be honest. Like, maybe as a teacher, I guess, in the end, or rabbi, if you will. But certainly the Muslims accept him as one of the great prophets in line all the way down from Abraham. Now the above verse I just mentioned, we gave them refuge on an elevated land of green valleys and springs of running water. The above verse of the Quran appears to support and not contradict the treatise that Jesus Christ was saved from the crucifixion and was given refuge in Kashmir, because Kashmir is an elevated valley. It's very green, it's very fertile, it's very lush, and there's a lot of water, and that's why the Pakistanis and the Indians are fighting over it like there's no tomorrow. It's one of the most fertile regions on the planet. The rest of Jesus' mother Mary also, there is no great resting place of Mary in the Holy. However, in a town called Muri in modern eastern Pakistan, a grave does exist for her called Mai Mari Da Astan, which means the final resting place of Mother Mary. Her tomb faces east-west, as in Jewish custom, rather than north-south, as in Islamic custom. Muri is a reference to Mary. The Quranic verse appears to support the view that both Jesus and his mother traveled out of Jerusalem and towards the east. Dave?
The tomb itself, the final and most dramatic piece of evidence supporting Jesus Christ, travels to Kashmir in the Rosabal tomb. Is the Rosabal tomb in the Khan Yar district of Srinagar in Kashmir. Local traditions and documents record this as the tomb of Yusuf Asaf. We have already mentioned sources that connect the person of Yusuf Asaf directly with Jesus Christ. This tomb offers physical evidence to support the oral and written traditions that all point to this being Jesus Christ's final resting place. This topic has been explored in detail in previous articles in the Review of Religions. The tomb is known as the tomb of Yusuf Asaf, and there is evidence to support that Yusuf Asaf was the name Jesus was known by in the East. In addition to the similar teachings in parables, we learn that Yusuf Asaf was a prince prophet who traveled from the Holy Land to flee persecution. That sums that up. The most significant piece of physical evidence linking the inhabitant of Rosabal to Jesus Christ are the carved footprints next to the tomb. These footprints show marks or scars on the feet. The scars are at different places on each foot, consistent with the scars of one who has been crucified with a single nail driven through both feet.
Yeah, it's it's just out there, guys. You make up your own mind. Now, what are the implications? So the article believes there are certain implications, and we're going to discuss this, of course, ourselves. The evidence hence points to Jesus Christ having journeyed to the east after surviving the crucifixion and ultimately being buried in the Rosabal tomb in Srinagar. If this is correct, what are the implications? The summary of the thesis and implications summarized in the final minutes of the BBC documentary, Did Jesus Die? There's actually, and I suggest that everybody out there, I think you can go to the BBC site and just watch the documentary. It's called Did Jesus Die? It's fascinating to watch, so please go ahead and do. There are many who believe this to be the tomb of Jesus. If this is the tomb of Jesus, then he spent most of his life in the mountain kingdom of Kashmir. He did not die on the cross. There was no resurrection. He did not ascend into heaven, and he does not sit at the right hand of God. Well, not then. maybe now, who knows? For many Christians, this would be the end of Christianity as we know it. So that's a fairly heavy statement.
It is.
Progressive Christian author Mark Mason, however, it is right. Progressive Christian author Mark Mason, however, is of the opinion that if Rosabal was found to be the final resting place of Jesus Christ, it would not have a large impact on Christianity, stating that whether Jesus died on the cross or not is a minor point. He stresses that it is the suffering upon the cross that is significant, and this would have taken place even if Jesus Christ had survived. A more liberal approach, and it's actually a really good point, the suffering. It is the suffering on the cross that washed away our sins, not necessarily his death. It's a very interesting point. A more liberal approach to the Bible may leave room for this interpretation, yet the inescapable fact is Christian theology would be heavily undermined if the Rosabal is proved authentic. One aspect of Jesus' story, definitely require revelation, would be the Christian and Islamic prophecies about the second coming of Jesus Christ. If Jesus Christ is buried in Rosabal, then the prophecies about his second coming cannot be taken to be literally true, as understood by many Muslim and Christians today. The only remaining option for the fulfillment of the prophecies about the second coming would be for another separate individual to appear in the spirit and power of Jesus Christ. A precedent or precedence exists for this in that John the Baptist was declared by Jesus Christ himself as the second coming of the prophet Elijah. It is in this way that Hadrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, claimed under divine command to be the second coming of Jesus Christ. In his famous lecture delivered on November 4th, 1905 at Ludhiana, a town in Punjab, India, he openly and emphatically declared the following: "All Muslims, listen. God has communicated this tiding to you through me, and I have duly conveyed the message. Now it is for you to heed or not to heed. The plain truth is that Jesus, on whom be peace, is dead, and I swear by God that I am the prophet who was to appear." Now, if this is not the most controversial thing we've ever shared on air, I don't know what is.
Wow. So I'm going to presume shortly after that he was, rest in peace, right?
Yeah, that's right. Look, Dave, I mean, the implications are staggering, and it would mean, though, that for 2,000 years the church, much in the vein of Dan Brown's revelations, even though they might be different, has conspired to keep the truth from us, certainly, or at least misinform us somewhat as to the nature of the events that took place. That in itself, of course, is a terrible thing, right? And you add to that all the recent calamities the church has experienced. None of this is going really well. I think, that's my opinion. I don't think it's going really well for the church.
Yeah, it doesn't do it any favors. But I think the people who are there now, except for maybe the Pope himself, I think there would be really little known about this. They would concentrate so much on the text that nothing else would even matter. Not the temperature of the day, not the color of my sandals or my robes, right? So, see how I put that into context. Really, it would only be, and if the Pope had already, the former Pope had already visited the tomb, it's quite possible that it's real. It's quite possible that substantiated it. And I think that if that's the case, why would they want to turn this information out to the public themselves, only to have, Kashmir, outdo Rome with visitations from followers? Yeah. I think that would be really hard. They'd have to really protect it as well. It'd be something, it'd be looted. Look, keeping the mystery on it is okay, it's one thing. But declaring it true, I think, is a long shot.
I completely agree there. Now, interestingly enough, the next text, we won't share it with you today, there's not enough time, but you might recall Mark Mason was mentioned earlier. Mark Mason said, the progressive Christian author. Yeah, so the next piece of information comes directly from Mark Mason's website. So we're going to share his article on this with you. So his direct article and his view on whether or not Jesus survived the crucifixion and how it would not negatively impact Christianity necessarily. So we like to stay on topic and continue along. So next week we will bring you Mark Mason's expanded viewpoint and how he sees it. Again, he's a Christian author, progressive, but he's a Christian author. It's important to understand. And then we're going to have a whole bunch of other articles as well. Some of it replaying the information we've given you, and others giving you some or a little bit more of an insight. And we're also going to share some very, I guess, spiritual insights here, which come from a Gnostic teachings website. So after Mark Mason, we're going to look at some of the Gnostics and what they felt was happening here. And just to let you know, the Qumran texts or such, or even the Nag Hammadi rolls, they're all Gnostic writings, right? Gnosis meaning knowledge. So this is the I guess the hidden Christian or the hidden knowledge of Christianity that didn't quite make it into the Bible. So there's a lot of information yet to come. So next week is going to be a bumper. And it's really, again, this is an exercise in critical thinking and analysis. It is not an exercise in vilifying or breaking down or bringing down any religious thought or any religions. This is not the point of this, right? But we have to understand that conspiracies are reality. And we have to understand that we only know half, well, if half, the truth, okay? We don't know the full story. And it's important that we make a concerted effort of trying to understand the world, because if Dave and I are correct, and this is a cycle of reincarnation and on we go, right? Then it's up to us to do something to break that cycle, something to get out of it, something to raise awareness, something to wake everybody out of their collective slumber, right? The movie They Live is great. There's a graffiti at the beginning of the movie which says, "They live, we sleep," and it's true. I think most of us are sleepwalking through life, without any real connection to anything, and I think it's a horrible state to be in. And in fact, the people that are probably most awake are the ones that are the most miserable, right? Because if you're living in misery and poverty and hunger, you are awake. You know what's going on. Like you are living your life. It is us that live in relative comfort that have been, lulled into a false sleep, into false comfort, thinking, oh, this is the life, right? This is the life. And in fact, I don't think this is the life at all. I think there's a lot more to life than this. I think we're living a fraction of the percentage of our potential. It's scary, right? Yeah,
it is. I want to make a point here, and I just had a vision of how to explain it. And this life that we're living right now is sort of like when you're delivered to a daycare center or a creche, right? Mm-hmm. In my mind, I'm seeing a pioneer crossing the top of a hill, a small hill, and seeing it at a valley expanse as far as the eye can see, and knowing you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But in the creche, in reality, with our sunglasses off, that's what we see and we think we can do. But in reality, there's fences and there's child safe equipment. There's nothing in there that we can hurt ourselves with. All of the everything in there is already vetted for safety, right? So if you're an Illuminati or you're, one of them, whoever they are, right? You're one of them, and you've created our existence around us to make it safe, but safe for them, not safe for us. And in this existence that we live, we're incapable of seeing outside it. And I think sometimes when these stories and there's these parts of information, the drip comes from here, comes from there, we piece together bits of information and find out it's a lot bigger than we thought, that it goes a lot deeper than we thought, it's a lot wider than we thought, and there's a lot more information out there beyond those bounds of which we were originally thought were boundless, but we have been encaged, Mekki.
Yes, I agree. It is. But look, by the same token, this is the hardest journey anyone will ever take, right, Dave? I mean, to make
Knowledge.
that realization.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So people say ignorance is bliss. I completely and
Completely
utterly
is.
agree.
Agreed.
Ignorance is bliss. Yeah, I mean, you can live the best life if you're ignorant of things. Not stupid. I'm not saying stupid is bliss. I'm saying ignorance is bliss. You're still a normally functioning human being. You accept what it is. You know, off we go. But you don't really know anything deeper. You're ignorant to it, which is cool, and you're happy. In fact, blissful, right? Beyond happy. Whereas knowledge is misery. Knowledge is truly misery. The more you know, and the more you know about the state of the world, and the more you know about your life and your circumstances, the more you can see into the future and what it holds, your eventual death, because that's the thing, right? And the misery that's happening all over the planet. I mean, the more you know, the more, for the most part, the less happy you are, I guess, unless you're a psychopath, in which case you got no empathy, right? So you're quite happy, everybody's suffering, I don't care. But if you're normally functioning human being with a normal emotional and I guess a moral life, ethical life, you know, viewpoint, then you would feel empathy and you would suffer with people, you know, at least spiritually. But it's something you have to wrench yourself out of, because knowledge is absolutely necessary in order to move forward.
Meki,
Right? We can't live in ignorance.
I just keep seeing the ignorant. The guy from the Matrix that was the double-crossing guy, he's got the piece of steak. He goes, I know it's a piece of steak, and I know it's not real, but oh, it's delicious.
Yeah, I know.
Right? He was the guy that they wrote you in to understand what it's like from our point of view.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because he doesn't even want it. He doesn't even care. He doesn't even care.
No. There's the music. Donate, guys, if you can. It's Listener Funded Radio, and click on the links to the sponsors on the site.
And don't forget, you would have already sprung forward. Enjoy that extra. No, the loss of an hour. Take care. And stay tuned for Joe Bear.
Stick around. Yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.